Welcome to Radiant Midlife, the podcast for women who know they're here to lead differently. I'm your host, Tara Preston, midlife matriarchal awakening and transition guide, sacred nourishment and feminine prosperity mentor, creator of the Flower of Life Akashic Healing Method and certification, serving women globally for over 14 years. Here we explore midlife as a sacred portal of rebirth, a time for cycle breakers, visionaries, and mothers of new paradigms to awaken their power and rise as matriarchs. Each week, we'll dive into soulful conversations that blend the spiritual and the practical, from feminine leadership, womb wisdom, and prosperity to holistic wellness, hormones, and herbal support. Everything you need to feel nourished, radiant, and free in this next evolution of your life. Because midlife isn't an ending, it's the beginning of your most powerful chapter yet. Before we begin, I'd love to gift you my free ebook, Sacred Nourishment for Midlife Radiance, a beautiful guide filled with nourishing rituals, herbal wisdom, and feminine prosperity practices to support your vitality and radiance. You can download it through the link in the show notes. Welcome home. Enjoy this episode of Radiant Midlife. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of the Radiant Midlife Secret Series podcast. I can't wait to dive into another one of these. They have been so inspiring and illuminating, even for myself. I'm really enjoying what we're having the opportunity to collaborate on and bring forward on. I bring forward as well, and I hope that you are as well as a listener. So today I am with Chanin Harmony, and she's the founder of the Feminine Resistance, guiding women through midlife reclamation of body, voice, dignity, and sovereignty. Oh, I just love that. I have been watching Chanin online for some time, and again, bringing forward these women who are really embodied in this wisdom, in this unique perspective that gives us an opportunity to look at this midlife transition through the lens of something that's a bit different than a lot of the mainstream kind of narrative that we're hearing. And again, the invitation is for you to tune in, to listen for the nuggets of wisdom, to start to really uncover the truth of what midlife can mean for you beyond that collective noise right now. So I'm excited. And I know one of the reasons too that I was watching you for a little bit there, and you're really talking about, and we'll see how this plays in today. I think it will, just based on some of the pieces that we're reading for it, was around hot flashes, and some of the themes that we've been talking about is body wisdom and listening to the symptoms and the signs of our body. And I saw you really speaking to uncovering the messages of what hot flashes are. So I'm going to introduce you just a little bit more here, and just give me 1 second. And then I'll hand it over to you. If there's anything else you want to share, you can, and we'll just kind of dive right in from there. So her work explores the feminine wound, the long-standing conditioning that taught women to endure, accommodate, and silence themselves in order to belong. Over time, these patterns don't disappear. They imprint in the human system and shape energy, health, identity, and relationships. Chanin approaches midlife as a natural reckoning and reset, a moment when the body and inner world begin to surface what has been carried quietly for decades or generations. Through energy alchemy, sound and vocal resonance, and deep pattern recognition, she supports women in releasing survival strategies and reconnecting with their truth in a grounded and humane way. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that you want to add, but I'll hand it over to you. And if there's not, maybe just kind of tell us a little bit about where and how you landed in this midlife conversation, where that kind of,
Yeah, that's great. And I will, you said feminine resistance, and it's feminine renaissance. And I just wanted to, did I type?
Yes, it is. That's right. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I might have, I just wanted to clarify that because it's a renaissance, right? It's a rebirth.
Yes.
and the way I obviously, like for me, it's like the way I got into it was that is my a lived existence right now. Like I can see my rosacea is on fire today. Yay, thank you so much.
Yes,
That
yes. I
started,
can't see it, but I hear what you're saying. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I see it. I'm like, oh my gosh. But
Right.
yeah, it's really, I was not planning, right, to be where I am right now with my focus. And but my
Mm.
body, right, my higher self said, but yes, this is how you can best help, because the way generally where we get our passions from is from our lived experience and our wisdom.
Right.
And as I have
Mm-hmm.
been going through this the past almost 3 years now, I had surgery, and my body's been getting louder and louder and louder and saying, can you please pay attention to me? And that just created, I think in September, I started going to physical therapy. And that really started bringing up emotional stuff that had been buried, in my tissues and such. And then that is what, I guess that was the precipice, the instigator to my body
Mm-hmm.
renaissance program. And then the body renaissance program has now morphed into the feminine renaissance program, because we are so much more
Mm.
than our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love that. So one of the first pieces that kind of grabbed my attention was, and let's see if I can find it here. It was around body symptoms, blah, 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 and the emotional strategies. So exploring emotional strategies and how they imprint in the human system, but more so, I would love to explore this idea of like emotions and how they imprint the human system, and just yeah, just kind of seeing what you have to speak to in regards to that.
Oh goodness. That is the basis of everything. And so, long life story short, I suffered a lot of trauma in my life, and had ended up with CPTSD. Well, that's what it's called now. It was PTSD when I was diagnosed with it. And
Right.
and looking at my ancestry, my dad died at the age of 46 from a heart attack, from stress, from a
Mm.
very stressful life. It runs in his family. And for me, like, the because I work with the chakra system, so I'm very familiar with the different emotions that get trapped in your chakras, that get trapped
Mm-hmm.
in your body. And it's just been so many things. Like, for instance, long story short, 3 years ago, I ended up getting to both pelvic organ prolapse surgery. And
Mm-hmm.
prior to having to get that, I had never heard of that. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and a partial hysterectomy. And I had
Mm-hmm.
had problems for over 15 years with my reproductive system.
Mm-hmm.
And I was happy on the one hand that I could finally get my uterus removed because of all the
Yes.
problems. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
expecting the grief also that I had, because
Mm-hmm.
as someone who works with energy and helps
Mm-hmm.
people release trapped emotions from their bodies, I felt like a failure because I hadn't been able
Mm-hmm.
to heal myself. And what I
Mm-hmm.
accepted was that at that point, my poor uterus had held on to so much emotion and trauma for me. It just needed to be relieved of its duty. It's
Yeah.
an interesting way to
Yeah.
put it.
And not even just your trauma, like it's like ancestral, trauma and grief, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's a statistic from the World Health Organization that 1 in 3 women in the world will get a hysterectomy by the age of 60. And their other statistic is that reported 1 in 3 women have some kind of sexual trauma in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a
That's right.
coincidence. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a coincidence. And so that when I saw that statistic when I was getting my surgery and everything, like the bells went off with what happened in my family with sexual trauma, and how all of the women in my family ended up with hysterectomies or infertility, things along those lines. Every single one of us
Mm-hmm.
impacted by my grandfather. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it runs really deep. In fact, a few years ago, I had a fibroid. My cycles were starting they were not the same. And I had moved through, dealing with my mother with mental health issues and
Mhm.
my daughter, a lot of caretaking. patterns rearing their head up in midlife, and lo and
Yeah.
behold, it resulted in, some womb healing that needed to happen. And I had this fibroid that had come out, and I hadn't really had many issues up till that point. But when I just, the nature of my work is to go deep. Why is this present? Why is this here? And I actually could feel a lot of like anger and rage over caretaking and the role of the
Mm,
feminine, but I got like a lot of my grandmother. Like I just kept feeling like my grandmother. So,
mm.
and really sitting with it, I remember even sharing tears and having emotions. And I just could really feel like the lineage of what I was holding and how that was showing up in my body. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to contribute to what you're saying, and that, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really deep work, if we're, especially if we're willing to be present with it and go that deep. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Because one of my specialties and favorite things to do is healing ancestral trauma.
Ah,
And that is my jam. I just did
I
two
love
sessions
it.
today that were so much fun and odd. One
Yeah,
of them
I
very
know,
odd.
I get it.
Yeah, one was really weird.
It's such
But
deep work, but we're having fun, but we're still compassionate and witnessing, and it's a lot, but yes.
right. And like with my grandma who was married to my grandfather, oh, I spontaneously a couple years ago started releasing through my body her rage and her
Hmm.
humiliation and shame and embarrassment that I had inherited through my reproductive system. And then
Hmm.
another time I did it intentionally, and
Hmm.
holy moly, like that was a lot. That I sobbed like, and I screamed like, just all of this ancestral rage, right, coming up through out of me. And oh my goodness, it just, the release was incredible.
Yeah, that's so interesting. We were talking about something similar in a previous podcast episode, actually, about HRRT and or HRT. And I know it's a big topic, and we don't necessarily have to get into the big topic here. But one thing, though, that I was bringing forward was like how I have heard a lot of like, top influencers around menopause and HRT speak about how, their anger and their rage kind of subsides, with their estrogen patch. And I'm like, okay, but I think we should be feeling the anger and the rage. And so I'm curious, like you've moved through some really deep layers around that. I mean, I don't, I mean, it's always, I think that I feel that, I mean, it's always up um, to the personal choice of the woman. But I'm curious, like, as you move through all of that, how did it shift you? How did it heal you? What was on the other side for you?
For me, it's just peace.
Mm.
Peace, absolutely. And
Hmm.
not, I mean, and this has been a journey the past 8 years in particular, but not being so
Yeah.
reactive, um, like
Yeah.
having things happen that ordinarily, or rather historically, would set me off because I was quick to
Right.
anger,
Right.
and being like, oh, yeah, I can see that. And that's annoying, but I'm not going to let that disrupt my moment or my day or my week.
Hmm.
And like that for me personally, that was tremendous, not getting annoyed with my husband so easily or
Yeah,
whatever else was
absolutely.
going on in the world. And I did
Hmm.
want to say, because you brought it up, hot flashes have been my main thing. They
Hmm. Yeah, speak
started,
to that. Absolutely.
they started on, so I had my surgery 2/24 of 23. And on August 8th, the Lionsgate of 2023, my hot flashes started that night. And I was
Mm.
like, all right, universe, what the heck?
Right.
And I believe that so much of our hot flashes are about suppressed anger. I mean, you think about it. I mean, it to me, it seems logical, right?
Hmm.
When we get
Yeah.
angry, we get hot, and we don't have rosacea, our faces get really red,
Right.
and I will be truthful. That's been my main symptom, with some weight gain, but that's mostly just because I haven't been exercising,
Yeah.
mostly. But I actually last Tuesday, I said the heck with it. I'm going to try the HRT patch.
Hmm.
Um, and finally, like last night, I did not wake up with any hot flashes. I didn't have my normal 8:30, 9:30 p.m. hot flashes. Like it was 10 o'clock, and I'm like, I didn't have to kick off my clothes and my blankets.
Yeah. Yeah.
but but you said something very important, Tara, and that is that yes, we can take HRT of some form or another. And yes,
Right.
it can help you help us not be so reactive and angry, but it is
Yeah.
not getting to the root cause. When you go
Right.
off that HRT, at some point, it is very likely, because you didn't resolve the root cause, you're
Mhm.
going to fall back into that pattern in some form or another. And so I'm not
Yeah.
anti-HRT, obviously, because we
Yeah.
need relief. We need sleep,
Yeah.
right?
And it is
But
a
we still got to
holistic,
do the work.
yeah, doing the work. Exactly. I think that something that you mentioned too, through sharing with me was that midlife is a pivot. It's, yeah, yeah. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
So much so, and you brought up the caregiving thing, and so
Hmm.
often at this age, so many of us are in a sandwich.
Yes,
We're
big
in the
time.
sandwich, right? The sandwich generation. We're still taking care of kids and loved
Hmm.
ones. Thankfully, all
Yep.
my kids are gone, but I mean,
Right.
out of the house. But
Hmm.
it's also, I was just talking with a client earlier. She just retired. She's in her early 60s, and she's like, "What do I do with my life now?" And she's feeling that but it's, instead of reframed it, it's not a bad thing. It's like, what do I get to do with my life now,
Yeah.
right? Total different viewpoint of it and attitude towards it. Like, we don't have to take care of people anymore. We get to do what we want to do. We get to discover even what we want to do, because if we've spent so much of our lives taking care of other people and putting ourselves last, like, we don't even know what makes us happy anymore.
Hmm.
So it's an opportunity to rebirth ourselves, to reinvent ourselves, and to return to our true selves, right? Our core essence, which is a being of love, without all this conditioning and trauma and everything else we've had. I get very passionate.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really important. And one of the things that you also mention is why being fine became a common survival strategy for women. And
Yep.
so yeah, let's talk about that. Why did it really start working for us as a coping mechanism or a strategy survival? Hmm.
Yeah, and obviously not intentional. Yeah, because for
Hmm.
those who don't know, I wrote this whole post about being fine, how we say we're fine, and our men should know, when we say we're fine, we are not fine. that is a,
Right.
that is a cue, right? Like, no, I'm not
Hmm.
actually fine, but I don't feel safe talking about my emotions, which
Hmm.
is a generational thing for women in
Hmm.
particular, because we don't want to be perceived as over emotional, as hysterical, as
Hmm.
too much. So we suppress it. Or so many of us, we got in trouble for speaking our truth growing up, or just in society. And so we just stifle everything. I'm fine. How are you doing?
Hmm.
I'm fine. Do you need help
Hmm.
with that? No, I'm fine, because we don't want to be a burden. And
Hmm.
we go through our lives, as I said, we're fining ourselves. If we think of the word fine as a penalty, as a punishment, we are fining ourselves to a state of disease and dysfunction, because we're not
Hmm.
expressing ourselves, expressing our feelings, expressing our truths.
Yeah, and I feel like a big part of my work too has, and I feel like you can probably speak to this, and I think it's actually just bringing this piece into the conversation is really helping women like listen to and like honor, their feelings, their symptoms. Like we just haven't been taught to just like slow down, to just like listen. And part of like the system that we've kind of had to learn to adapt into is that we haven't been taught to just listen, to just honor. And so, do you feel like that's a part of your work as well?
Absolutely. And that the Body Renaissance program, like I mentioned, just came through me. I had
Hmm.
no inkling that that was going to happen, but like I said, through the PT, this came through. And so
Yeah.
um, I used Chat GPT to help me, because I'm not an expert in the body, but I created audios for 30 different body parts and organs. And it's part
That's so
all kinds of different
cool.
sound healing with frequencies, and I do toning, but then we also listen, and we do the Ho'oponopono prayer for that body part and send it love with our own hands, each person, right? We're all our own healer,
Mm.
sending love to that body part or that organ. And then I'll have a bunch of information about what does that organ hold, how does it help us, etc. But it's just amazing. And it brings me such joy. I finally finished the last recording today. I finished the last ones today for the
That's so
program.
cool. Do
Yeah,
you, okay, so you haven't put it into use. I was going to say, do you find that there's like a body organ that comes up more so for women than others?
yes.
Would you share?
Yep, there's three of them that I perceive as the main, as not the main three, but the
Hmm.
top three. So obviously the
Okay.
womb, right? And I call it
Right.
the universal womb.
I love
Um,
that.
that's like kind of like a no-brainer for women, right? That's our
Right.
reproductive system. But then
Hmm.
the liver, because the liver processes for us, it filters for us, and it holds in traditional Chinese medicine, and in my experience as a practitioner, so much anger. And that
Hmm.
is then where the hot flashes come from, is our poor overtaxed liver. And then the other one is the heart, because we hold so much grief and feelings of betrayal and bitterness and unforgiveness, and it's not our fault, but so much of it gets stored in here. And that's why so many women have things like breast cancer or asthma or heart disease is, I think, our number one killer. And it's
Hmm.
because of our poor overburdened hearts, that sometimes just I've seen them just like chains wrapped around them, or just concrete, it's just because
Hmm.
it's just not been safe to love or be loved.
Hmm. Or yeah, or receive love. Yeah, exactly. Oh my, yeah. That's powerful. That's really powerful.
Thank you.
Um, let's talk a little bit about silencing truth. And when this kind of, we've touched in and we wove this into the conversation, but just in terms of silencing truth, how do you feel like that impacts a woman? But in midlife, where do you feel like there's an opportunity to speak more truth?
Yeah, and it was actually my black throat chakra that got me on this whole
No
path.
way.
Yes, I didn't even know about chakras really at the time. But that was the thing that got me to where we are right now talking today, because
Hmm.
my dad was very authoritarian. He was
Hmm.
a Marine, and
Oh wow, yeah.
right, you didn't
Hmm.
talk back. You didn't, you certainly, did not challenge him or anything like that. And for
Hmm.
me, because I was one of those emotional children, um,
Oh.
yeah, I was the crybaby of the family. It became a family joke. Like, if it's not a holiday till Shannon is crying.
Oh,
Yeah.
so mean. But I can see it in a family dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. But I stifled my truth. And plus I had an upbringing where we weren't allowed to talk about what was going on in our family and such. That's another podcast. But
Hmm.
so very much not about talking about my truth, my feelings, my identity even. And
Hmm.
it creates, the blockage in the throat chakra, so that we can go both ways, right? We either completely shut down and we don't talk about our feelings, or we become yellers, right? To be heard,
Hmm.
someone listen to me. And so we are yelling to be heard, or
Right.
we become excessive with gossiping, all kinds of different things.
Hmm.
Um, and what I see in midlife is we begin to, there's a YouTube channel, I think it's called We Do Not Care Club or something like that. Because we do
Yeah,
something like that.
I know. I don't care. The I don't care club, I
Is
think.
that what it is?
I think something. We're in the right. Yeah.
Something about not caring,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And I think we do get to that point. And because then of the hormone fluctuations, we lose the buffer that used to keep us
Yeah.
silent. And so then we lose the filter and we start to say what we think, sometimes to the extreme, that pendulum swings to the other side, where
Right.
I remember that with my mother. I'm like, Mom, you can't say that.
Right? Yes.
Mom, you're embarrassing me. Don't say things like that.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and I mean, there's so much to it generationally, and we can, bring in the patriarchal system, et cetera, of women being shut
Hmm.
down. But yeah, the
Hmm.
throat chakra is a huge one for women.
Hmm.
That's that not being
Yeah.
able to speak our truth.
Right. And how truth telling does really become pivotal in midlife. Like I know working with women too, it's not even just truth telling, but even just to uncover your truth, to hear your own truth, and then to speak your truth. We're talking, and you mentioned too, this like natural reset that happens in midlife. Well, for many women, we have kind of disconnected or been shut down. And so there is this opportunity to actually redesign our lives into alignment with our deeper truth. And it's not always easy to do, of course, because it means change.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's so powerful and liberating when we really give ourselves permission to do so.
And
So you speak about the feminine wound, and I love that I speak a lot about that too. But you talk about how that shows up in the body and how it impacts a woman. Would you just share a little bit more? And I think it's an important piece, and I think it's an important piece that actually gets like left out of the collective conversation around midlife. Like where does the sacred feminine, where does our feminine essence, our feminine vitality, where does that get woven into this midlife conversation? Yeah.
yeah, from a body based viewpoint, like that is our sacral chakra. That is our reproductive system, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, and I do believe that's why so many women get the hysterectomies or have the reproductive problems, whatever they may be. But there's also that repressed sexuality, right? The fear of being sexual, of being seen as sexual. I remember when I was like 12 or so, I was afraid for my bra strap to even be shown or to wear a
Yeah.
shirt that was mildly see-through because
Right.
it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe for me to be
Hmm.
seen as a female. It wasn't safe for people to know, it wasn't safe for me, for people to know I had boobs. Right. And so that's
Hmm.
part of the feminine wound is all of the sexual trauma and the mistreatment and being treated like property and the suppression and the oppression and all these things that we have been going through for thousands of years that gets passed on again and again and again. And it's not
Hmm.
shifted as much as I would think it would have by now.
I know. Yeah. 16 years doing this work. I remember when I started, I mean, we are seeing it. Like it's really cool to see the narrative, and there's a lot more in the collective about the feminine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. When I first started out, I thought that we would see just, I don't know, such a big like collective impact of the divine feminine rising. And it
Yeah.
is here, but it's a little bit slower than I thought initially. Yeah.
Well, sure, because the patriarchy, and I don't like to say the patriarchy
Yes.
because it's not about men, but let's just say the patriarchal system.
It's not about men.
Yes,
It's a system of suppression that's rooted in a more hyper masculine, wounded masculine aspect. Yeah.
exactly. And that just is rising up as well. It's butting
Yeah.
against us, right? And so
Hmm.
it's starting to crumble, and that system's like, oh no, I have to hold on for dear life, and we're like, but
Right.
we're trying to come up, and
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, and so it's this little huge battle going on right now, and
Yes.
we shall win. It will
The
happen.
feminine renaissance is here. It's
It is
happening.
here.
Yes. That's wonderful. Was there anything else that you just feel you would like to contribute or just share to the audience and those listening in terms of, some of the deeper wisdom that you want to share?
Let me listen for that for a moment.
No problem.
I feel like it is these two sessions that I did for women today. I pull my personal message cards, and I have a deck called Your Soul's Desires. What does your
Mm.
soul want you to have more of? And both of them had the community card come out.
Oh,
And I feel like that is a huge, and that's part of the feminine renaissance is women as we are coming together in collaboration, right?
mhm.
Getting away from the competition. I just did a post yesterday about how I came out of the womb competing, my mom told me.
I love
Right.
that.
And it's so much about stop living in isolation, because so many of us do
Yes.
that
Hmm.
for a multitude of different reasons, because of we can get into the sister wound, right?
Yeah.
Right, that fear of having relationships with other women for all the reasons. And
Yeah.
as well is crumbling. And so for women out there who are feeling alone, who are wishing that they had a community, reach out. Just reach out to Tara, reach out to me, reach out to somebody, because you're not alone in feeling alone. And it's so important that we will we move faster together. And so the more we are aligned together, the faster the divine feminine will return.
I love that. Thank you so much. This has been a really illuminating conversation. I'm doing my best to keep these at about 30 minutes so that they're easy to drop into, so we can go deep and listeners can get the wisdom, but I definitely could talk to you much longer. You have so much to share and so much embodied wisdom. So tell us about your gift. I think you mentioned it during our conversation. Oh no, that's the body renaissance. Tell us about your free gift.
So the gift is from the body renaissance, and it is the universal womb audio to help release whatever is going on down there in your sacral chakra, in your reproductive system, in your universal womb, all that, the rage and the humiliation and the shame and all of that, and to reconnect with it, because we become so disconnected with it. We learn to hate it, right? We grow up hating our womb, hating our reproductive system. We could go on about that. So this audio is to help revamp your relationship with your womb.
Okay, I love that. Very powerful. And I will provide links to the link to the free gift, and then links to your social media. But is there any place that you've been kind of we can find you hanging out more than others?
I am moving my community over to the school community.
Oh, are you? Okay.
I am. That's where the body renaissance has been, and I'm changing that to the feminine renaissance. And so it's just going to be a wonderful community for women to come together and take part in community together as we go through this wonderful transition that we're going through.
Absolutely. If they were on school, I have no idea how it worked. Would they just be able to easily find you under feminine renaissance?
Yeah, they can look up the feminine renaissance, and I'll provide a link to it as well. And I'm still on Facebook. I'll be on Facebook.
We're going to drop all the links below anyways, but just sometimes it's easy to just, throw something out there where you hang out the most, and then, people can find you over there. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners. And once again, I'd love to have you come over and hang out on Telegram and just share your most important insight, your most important takeaway, and come gather in community. We'll see you there. Bye for now.
Bye.